Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today we're going to do a 5-minute journal from the book Care of the Soul by Thomas More, a guide for cultivating depth and sacredness in everyday life. And we're going to specifically be talking about the power in the soul. So I'm going to read some excerpts, kind of jump around in these few pages, and then we can journal about it for 5 minutes. So Thomas says, in the soul, power doesn't work the same way as it does in the ego and will. When we want to accomplish something egotistical, we gather our strength, develop a strategy, and apply every effort. This is the kind of behavior James Hillman describes as heroic or Herculean. He means the word in the bad sense, using brute strength and narrow rationalistic vision. The power of the soul, in contrast, is more like a great reservoir, or, in traditional imagery, like the force of water in a fast rushing river. It is natural, not manipulated, and stems from an unknown source. Our role with this kind of power is to be an attentive observer, noticing how the soul wants to thrust itself into life. What is the source of this soul power, and how can we tap into it? I believe it often comes from unexpected places. It comes first of all from living close to the heart and not at odds with it. Therefore, paradoxically, soul power may emerge from failure, depression, and loss. Writers are taught to write what you know about. The same advice applies to the quest for the power of the soul. Be good at what you're good at. Many of us spend time and energy trying to be something that we are not. But this is a move against soul, because individuality rises out of the soul as water rises out of the depths of the earth. We are who we are because of the special mix that makes up our soul. In spite of its archetypal, universal contents, for each individual, the soul is highly idiosyncratic. Power begins in knowing this special soul, which may be entirely different from our fantasies about who we are or who we want to be. So, today we can talk about the power of the soul. And as Thomas said, the soul and the power of it kind of is mysterious and sometimes unknown, but it is also just when you are who you are. I like how it was mentioned, it can come from traditional positive emotions like inspiration or joy, but it also can, the power of it can come from failure and depression. So, in moments, either in real time or in hindsight, where you look back and you're like, yeah, those moments shaped me. I overcame something or I accomplished something and it just fed me, it fulfilled me. Another question you could answer is what memories or activities or people inspire you? You walk away fulfilled, and that sort of fulfillment leads you to pursue more. So 5 minutes, and I'll start the clock. Oh, and another question actually. He likened the power of the soul to a great reservoir. So if you want to go kind of the imagery journal route, you can think of, is my great reservoir kind of like a still pond? Is my great reservoir bubbling over, just ready to overflow? Or does my great reservoir feel empty? So, 5 minutes, and we'll come back after. That was 5 minutes. So, when I was contemplating on my soul, power of the soul, and of course, we're trying to describe something probably indescribable, but even just for 5 minutes, it's kind of good to think about what is fulfilling me, what is lighting me up, or what are those dark times that actually did make me powerful in the end. So, I'm going to respond to the questions in backwards order. So right now, my great reservoir or the power of my soul feels calm. Sometimes I miss those moments where the reservoir feels like it's overflowing and it's like the muse is talking to me and I got to write down every single word. I can't miss anything. But of course, ebbs and flows, and this is why this water metaphor is perfect because I think to believe that my soul is powerful 100% of the time, and in the traditional power sense, which he specifically said not to think of that heroic brute strength, is unreasonable. I think the soul has many shades, and if we saw ourselves in that perspective more, from our soul's perspective of having varying degrees of lightness and heaviness, and that is how we get through all the different situations we're going to encounter. I would just be better off. So, the second question of what memories, activities, or people fulfill me, I like these journals. These are always eye opening. Always a surprise to me what I'm going to journal about, which I love. And I love just good musicals, good plays, live theater, and just appreciation for how a story is told. And a lot of times, fulfillment or memorable fulfillment for me is when it's unexpected. So sometimes, well, actually, all the time, when I'm going to a play or a musical, I don't read anything about it. I just know the title and that's it. And I just like being surprised. But it's fun when, like, for example, I saw Age of Innocence last year. And the only thing I looked up before is how long it was. And it was 3.5 hours, which I typically tap out at 2.5 with intermission. So that was my only impression going in. Was like, oh my God, this is going to be so long. And I was just absolutely stunned, connected, immersed in the story. I still think about that play just because it was such a surprise. And if you know, Age of Innocence takes place at the turn of the century, end of 18th century into, or 1800s to 1900s. And I typically don't watch those kind of stories, but I was totally captured by it. So those kind of moments make my soul feel powerful and just awakened. So, lastly, talking about another side of power of the soul, and it's when I actually set boundaries without thinking too hard about it. Because as he said, what's not soul power is using this heroic effort to do something, which a lot of times setting boundaries does. But when it's really easy to say no, it does feel like my soul is taking care of me, is leading the way. And that's kind of, matches with how I think of the soul, which is kind of this mysterious energy that is, you know, overlooking me or watching over me. So I hope you enjoyed this writing prompt today about the power of the soul. Please write in the comments what you journaled about. I would love to read it. And I'll see you next time.